Some new laws just passed Royal Assent in BC, and it's focused on airsoft. Let's see how it impacts the BC community, especially if you're a minor. So let me start by saying I'm not a lawyer. Anything I say here is definitely not legal advice in any way. I'm just interpreting and presenting this new act as a layman, and with the help of AI, who I got to help summarize it for us. So first off, they didn't ban airsoft in BC. But this act receiving Royal Assent means airsoft is on the radar of our lawmakers, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of this type of thing across the country in upcoming weeks and months. I've definitely noticed an increase of airsoft in the news, and more specifically, those stories of replica firearms triggering police interaction. So as usual, you've got a bunch of folks out there not using any common sense, and as a result, creating friction for us, the airsoft community. Now, as I said, I read through this act myself. I had AI read through it and summarize it. I asked a few specific questions, which I'll cover as we go through it, but nothing in it really surprised me, aside from some stuff to do with minors, but we'll get into that later. It's basically laws enforcing the social responsibility of owning and using the replica of a real firearm. Now, you might be saying, what's the big deal? It's just airsoft. And yes, that's true, but airsoft guns look like real guns. We don't have orange tip laws here in Canada, so at a distance, sometimes even close up, it's extremely hard to tell an airsoft replica from the real thing. So when folks see an airsoft gun, whether it's across the street, across the field, or in a car, they assume it's a real gun and they call the police. And when the police show up, the police assume it's a real gun, and that creates a very dangerous situation for everybody involved. I've actually witnessed an airsoft player being held at gunpoint by the police because they strayed too far out of the play area and onto private property. The homeowner didn't know there's an airsoft game going on next door and called the RCMP. And the call, which was probably something along the lines of, there's a man dressed in camouflage with an assault rifle sneaking around my property, got the RCMP's attention, who conveniently were close by and responded immediately with guns drawn. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, and to the credit of those RCMP officers, they handled the situation very professionally, and it was de-escalated quickly and safely. But it was scary, especially for the airsoft player who had 3 officers with live loaded weapons pointed at him yelling, "Drop the gun or we'll shoot." Not a situation you want to find yourself in. And as I said, to me, this is common sense. And as a community, we need to be teaching, mentoring, and encouraging both newcomers and existing players to recognize and understand that there is a social responsibility that comes with owning and using the replica of a real firearm. If the number of dangerous situations keep increasing, we will continue to be on the radar of lawmakers, and that's not a place we want to be. So seeing this bill come out prompted me to make this video, and I figured it was a good opportunity to not only walk through the bill so we can understand its impact, but also use it as an opportunity to discuss that social responsibility we as airsofters should be adhering to and promoting, so that we aren't impacting the community negatively. Let's be honest with ourselves. We're a fringe sport and a little bit of a black sheep when it comes to public perception in today's world. Firearms in general, especially the ones our airsoft guns are replicas of, are getting a lot of attention, and there's a lot of fear in the world due to violent events in the US. Now, I'm not saying hide the sport. Heck, I just launched a massive website and YouTube channel promoting airsoft in Canada. I'm just saying we want good attention and not bad. So every time somebody gets swarmed by a SWAT because they left an AK lying on the seat of their car in plain sight and then went into Timmy's for an ice latte, it's not the attention we want for our sport or community. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe you feel entitled. I can do what I want. It's just an airsoft gun. And if that's the case, I'm here to be your reality check, because when you've got a law enforcement officer pointing their loaded live firearm at you, they will not hesitate to pull that trigger and put you down if they think you have a real gun and are a threat. I can say with certainty it's not going to end out well for you either way. All right, let's get into the bill. So what is it? It's basically a provincial law aimed at reducing public fear and targeting public safety involving low-velocity firearms and replica firearms. So how do they define those? A low-velocity firearm is anything under 500 feet per second or 5.7 joules, and an imitation or replica firearm is anything that looks real. Now, airsoft falls into both of those categories, and both of those categories are outside of the Federal Firearms Classification Act. So they're not guns, they have their own classification. And just to show you how serious the province is about this, let's talk about the penalties. Fines up to $5,000 and sentences up to 12 months in jail for serious offenses. Now, those are some fairly hefty penalties, along with a criminal record. So it's something the BC Airsoft community is going to have to take seriously. Also, if you plan on coming to BC to play Airsoft, whether you're joining a milsim or just coming for day games, this will impact you as a tourist as well, so pay attention. The core piece of this is public disturbance in public places. So I would define a public disturbance as basically causing somebody enough concern that they've decided it was necessary to get the police involved. Now remember, you can't control other people's fear or irrational thought and behavior, but you can control your own behavior and actions. So that first piece is pretty straightforward. Essentially, don't cause a public disturbance with your replica. Be smart, meaning you shouldn't carry, use, store it, point it, shoot it, wave it around in public in a way that's going to cause public alarm. Stuff like carrying your airsoft gun from your house to your car and not using a case or bag, or leaving it visible in the back seat of your car. I've even recently had a player show up to one of our games and they drove there with their replica across their lap. Like, do yourself a favor, get a bag, get a case, and keep it in there when you're transporting. Keep it out of sight until you get to the airsoft field. If you've got a nosy neighbor, don't be running around your house or waving it around with open windows. If you want to do that, close the curtains, pull your blinds down, and do it in private. Poor elderly Mrs. Smith next door is going to be on the phone with 911 in seconds when she sees you through the kitchen window as you practice room clearing with your suppressed MP5 and full tactical kit. And they've defined public places as anywhere accessible to the public. And that includes Crownland, which we'll talk about in a bit. But they have made some hard no-go locations for airsoft as well, meaning you absolutely cannot take your airsoft replica to schools, universities, hospitals, daycare, courts, and places of worship. Just having an airsoft replica in one of those locations opens you to prosecution and/or penalty. So not much to talk about there, and it's pretty straightforward. Again, that list, just don't take your replicas to school, universities, hospitals, daycares, or court, or any place of worship. Now, the third piece is tailored to and around transportation. They've basically regulated that airsoft should be in an opaque case or bag and transported unloaded. So again, that's a bag or case, no mag in the gun, and preferably in the back seat or trunk of your car or out of public sight. Now, the fourth piece is a little bigger, and it's to do with minors. And out of all of this, it's some of the biggest changes. Now, a minor in BC is anybody under the age of 18. So from here on, when we talk about minors, we're talking about under 18. And this is where the Act gets a lot stricter from our current laws. Under this new law in BC, a minor cannot buy an airsoft gun, rent an airsoft gun, or be supplied an airsoft gun for payment. Ready for this? Nor can they buy ammunition or BBs. Yep, you heard me right. A minor cannot buy BBs, and that applies to retail stores, online sellers, and private sales. It's Section 11.2. I had to read it twice. A person must not sell or offer to sell ammunition for a low-velocity firearm to a minor. Minors can also not just carry airsoft guns around freely. They have to keep them in a locked, opaque container. Locked. Basically not visible, not accessible, cannot be transported loaded, and it has to be locked. This is actually stricter than how adults are required to transport. As an adult, it just needs to be in a case and unloaded. But as a minor, it needs to be in a locked case and unloaded. Now, there is a very important exception here that keeps airsoft alive for youth players. The law explicitly allows that minors can still use airsoft guns at airsoft fields, paintball-style facilities, and organized recreational locations, as long as the use is on-site and it's part of the activity being provided there. So this is how fields can still rent guns to minors and run games legally with minors attending. Thank goodness. So let me see if I can summarize this up. And again, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is just my understanding when it comes to this. The law isn't banning airsoft from minors, but it's putting tighter controls on access and handling. So under this act, minors can't buy, rent, or be sold airsoft guns or BBs unless it's at an airsoft facility. And that basically is just the rent part. And that's meant to prevent unsupervised ownership. Unsupervised. So with parental supervision, you can still buy, rent, or be sold airsoft guns or BBs. But at the same time, the law still recognizes that minors will still want to participate in a sport, which is why it's basically allowed them to use and own airsoft guns just in a controlled environment, like those organized fields and facilities. But they do need an adult to be present in any form of acquisition, and that's both for guns and BBs. And then there are the transport rules. Even though minors can't purchase their own gear, the law assumes they still own it and they will need to handle or move it, for example, bringing equipment to the field. And in those cases, they just have to transport it properly, meaning, again, it has to be in that secured, locked, unloaded, opaque container and handled safely. So they're trying to enforce a system where access is restricted, but participation is still allowed under controlled conditions for minors. And if you're a minor and you play airsoft, don't get discouraged. Just might have to keep your parents in the loop a bit more. And they'll have to help you out a bit more in terms of like renting or buying ammo. But you can still play, and we still want you out on the field. Now, the other piece I wanted to clear up is the term public spaces. And that's because Crown land is often regarded as public space, and a lot of us do play on Crown land. So if your club does play on Crown land, this will impact you. Now, for those clubs that do play on Crown land, the Act doesn't ban airsoft on public land, but it does change your risk level. The key issue is no longer just public safety, it's public perception. And if your game is visible to hikers, mountain bikers, drivers, or anyone passing by and they believe they're seeing real firearms, that can be treated as a public disturbance under the law. And since Crown land is often considered a public space, even a well-run safe game can draw police attention simply because of just how it looks to outsiders. Now, again, I don't want to promote us going completely underground, but I do think there are ways to maybe help reduce and mitigate some of that risk. So if you do play on Crown land, maybe just look at your ready-up areas and make sure you're not going to have anybody passing by get freaked out. Potentially get a few portable sandwich boards that say airsoft paintball game in progress so that anybody entering the area is going to be aware that these are not real guns. We're playing a game. And yes, I said paintball. Many people don't know what airsoft is, but paintball is very well known. And just using that term helps relate people in mass with guns running around the bush to something they're more familiar with. Again, I don't want the community to hide or go underground. Our sport is damn fun, and I love getting new players involved, and I want to see it grow. We just need to be a little more thoughtful on how we conduct ourselves and the public perception we're putting out there. All right, there you have it. That's my summary on the BC Firearms Violence Prevention Act, and I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts on this below. And remember, we're looking for airsoft correspondents from across the country. So if you're into content creation, whether it's written or video or any form of promoting airsoft, please reach out. We'd love to hear you. Stay safe out there and see you on the field. Ox out.